What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut remix album by Justin Bieber. Basically, this album is called My World's Acoustic, and it came out in the fall of 2010. Now, Justin Bieber followed up his two albums, My World 1.0 and My World 2.0, which came out in 2009 and 2010. This was kind of to capitalize on the buzz that he had because he was an overnight sensation. You know, he blew up all throughout the early 2010s and late 2000s and such, but they didn't want to full blown put out a second album that quickly and kind of ruin his buzz or at least kind of oversaturate the market. So they did a lot of stuff. There were some albums I reviewed, a couple of these, like I reviewed like Never Say Never, the remix album, which came out in early 2011, and then this was another album that kind of capitalized on the buzz, also just to kind of prove the versatility of Justin Bieber and such. And it's decent, but I think I ultimately like Believe Acoustic a little bit better, and probably the reason why is because Justin Bieber at the time was 18, 19, and such, and had more freedom to kind of have more smoky and kind of hazy kind of acoustic tunes. But this album, My World's Acoustic, has a lot of that kind of bubblegum pop type feel of it. It's just got a real kind of peppy and this kind of like not super optimistic, but just kind of almost kind of it's not super optimistic, but it does have like some kind of bubbliness about it that just kind of puts him in a more kind of teen bop kind of atmosphere. Kind of this album has some bubbliness about it that kind of makes it a lot more kind of teen pop in that sort of sense, which I don't want to say it takes away from it, but you'll notice between My World's Acoustic and Believe Acoustic that Believe Acoustic was a lot more smoky and kind of hazy, autumn tinged, kind of crisp kind of acousticness, but this one's just kind of more of like acoustic bops that you would see on like teen, teen sensation type places and that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. This is more teen oriented, but I mean, there is some gems on here that do kind of showcase the concept that Justin Bieber is pretty good at acoustic and that type of stuff, but it's just kind of the concept that it is. I would pretty much have to say I would have to say it's kind of in the variation of being preppy. I think that's kind of the concept about it, but it's just kind of that atmosphere where it's good, but it just kind of has a lot of bubbliness and almost, I don't want to say full blown unctuousness, but it's pretty devout and like towards the pep that it kind of has around here. It's just kind of the concept that initially Justin Bieber was kind of a teen sensation. The fact that he was 14, 15, 16 as he was making these series of albums, it kind of had that concept that he wasn't a full blown kind of dark and stark kind of moody individual or just full blown R&B lover man like Trey Songz or Usher or something like that. So this is kind of the concept. But I look after it. It's a good concept of a project. There was one single on here called Pray, and I'll go ahead and talk about that. There's one new song on here that's not on any previous Justin Bieber album to that point, and it's called Pray. Now, I don't recommend this song, but it is a single that was dropped from this project. So the reason why I don't recommend it is I feel like this is kind of one of the more unctuous kind of songs on here that just kind of had a lot more of like I mean, when it talks about pray, it's really the concept of being like kind of religious bound and a lot more just kind of in like a more homely sense and just kind of praying to get through the times and that type of stuff. Just a lot more kind of centered and 10 toes down and that type of stuff as far as like the concept of just putting faith in and that type of stuff as far as the attitude towards what happens about having an upbeat kind of attitude. I was thinking, sometimes there can be songs called Pray, like Sam Smith's Pray was a little bit more of like an effectual kind of song. That one was definitely a good bubbler, but I look after this one just kind of had a lot more just kind of pretty much damn near just preppy kind of this homeliness that just didn't really have like the connection behind it. But I just would have to say, it just was a lot more upbeat than like the kind of altitude that I would have liked for it. It's not really that acoustic either. This is pretty much just like a new song. It doesn't have too much acoustic variation, but it just kind of felt like a lot more super lighthearted and oriented just towards like a more kind of contemporary, kind of religious contemporary type tone that just didn't really have the effects. This is kind of out of character for Justin Bieber. I would have liked, like I did like the new songs on Believe Acoustic, but this one was just kind of a dud in the sense that I saw it. But talk about the rest of the album. So there's 10 songs on here. It's pretty brief and snappy. I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 4.5 songs out of 10 I recommend. So the 4.5 songs out of 10 I recommend would be Baby, One Time, You Smile, One Less Lonely Girl, and the almost song is Never Say Never. Basically, one of the best songs on this project is Baby Acoustic. I feel like this is like a good variation and a good kind of enhancement of the Baby song from My World 2.0. This is a very simmering kind of acoustic romance gem that has some late summer, has a late summer feel and brushes of fall about it. It just has a real kind of crisp feel, I would have to say. I do like this one. Really kind of adds some kind of crisp it really kind of adds like an edge to like Baby. I would definitely say it's just a good one to kind of have for that, because I do like Baby off of My World 2.0, but it is just very kind of bubbly. That one's like super poppy and bubbly, and it just feels a lot more teen bop oriented. But this one kind of gave it a little bit more of like a mellow kind of edge towards it, that just had a lot more romantic kind of smoky haze about it, that just kind of worked pretty well. It's pretty, this works. I do like the acoustic productions on here. Like some of the acoustic on this album, it works, but it's just a lot preppier and just more teen pop-ish in that type sense. It just, we'll get to the complaints about it, but this is one where the acoustic really shines through. So the next one that's another nice one is One Time Acoustic, and this one's from My World 1.0. The next one I recommend is One Time from My World 1.0. This is a warm kind of autumn hangout cut. It's a basic bop. I would feel like this is a pretty standard one just for a standard hangout in that sort of sense. It's kind of regular, just regular typical day type stuff. It's a hazy evening, I would also kind of say, and it's a good fit for acoustic. I definitely feel like this is a nice one for like some acoustic kind of playing. But this is kind of hazy. This is another one where I feel like Baby's a little bit more autumn tinged and kind of has like that more kind of edgy, crisp feeling. But I feel like this one's just kind of a more 4 o'clock p.m., 4 o'clock p.m., 5 p.m. in like September, October, early October, that type of stuff. Just kind of a little bit hazy, but just a little bit more contemporary, regular, and vanilla, I would have to say. It's just a nice kind of fit for that. You Smile is another crisp acoustic autumn charm of a song. This one's kind of down tempo, but it has a nice approach and fit with how it does it. This one's not quite as peppy as One Time and Baby, but I do feel like this is just kind of a more sultry and kind of romantic kind of hangout kind of song as far as that kind of goes. This one with a little bit more meaning and kind of the atmosphere, just a little bit more kind of rosiness about how it kind of goes. But I do like the concept. Like all of these are basically autumn bound, I would have to say, but some of these are just variations of like, you know, the different tempos. So it's kind of interesting to get like some upbeat acoustic and some down tempo acoustic and some of that, just kind of the different type ones for that. But this one's just a little bit more slow burn kind of one, I would have to say, but it is a nice one. It's real hooky too. One Less Lonely Girl is a nice one. This is some winding down malaise. This is a makeshift song. It's probably more makeshift than most of the rest of the album, I would have to say. It's the most makeshift, regular, kind of just got done with class, just got done with school, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. It's thoughtful and meaningful, and it is a pretty good acoustic cut, I would have to say. It's just kind of one for more thought-provoking and just kind of like You Smile, where I feel like this one's kind of more mid-tempo. It's not so much down-tempo as much as You Smile, but it kind of it's probably more meaningful than You Smile, but it also has a little bit more pep to it than it's just kind of a more regular kind of makeshift kind of typical kind of day type tune as far as that goes in an acoustic sense. Never Say Never is the almost song. It's an ambitious kind of acoustic bubbler. It has Get Up and Go, but it feels kind of like a teeny bop kind of song. The thing about this one is this one just doesn't feel as cultivated compared to some of the other songs on this project, where this one still feels like a teen bop kind of song either way. I feel like Justin Bieber and Jaden Smith do a good job on here, but it still kind of feels like this is more kind of teen bop, kind of early shopping mall kind of music that just didn't quite get the cultivated edge that the rest of this project kind of did. This one's just kind of more seeming like for like junior high and early high school type bops as far as that's kind of concerned. But it is a nice one. It just kind of has less variations to where I could think to listen to. It's just kind of the concept. But it has good acoustic productions on here and that type of stuff. I just would have to say it's just kind of an odd one, or it's just kind of one that has like a questionable. This is just one that's kind of more of like wondering as to where and how to listen to it in that sort of sense. This kind of thing. But to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy, like Down to Earth is one that kind of had like a more kind of like sullen and kind of glum type attitude that just was really kind of like really malaised and more than I was expecting. But that one just didn't quite have the correct pitch. But then Stuck in the Moment was one that was too peppy and preppy, and that one had too much bubbliness about it. And then I didn't really like Favorite Girl live just because I felt like that song probably shouldn't have been live. I probably would have liked that song and recommended it if it had just been a regular acoustic version, but I think there should have just been a live album for the live songs. And then I think That Should Be Me was just kind of one that just was another down tempo kind of piano ballad that just didn't really fit the song, or just didn't really fit the project that well. It just was kind of one that was more somber and just didn't have like the edge towards it. And then yeah, I talked about before about not really appreciating Praise. That one is just not a very good choice of a single, just a little bit too kind of preppy and kind of, prayer like, I would have to say. But to score this album, me liking basically 4.5 songs out of 10, I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 4.75 out of 10. So in terms of the score for this album, I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 4.75 out of 10. Like, I feel like I liked enough of this project to at least somewhat recommend it, but there's a lot wrong with it, I would have to say. Like, some of these acoustic bops on here just don't really fit the mentality that I was kind of expecting. I know that this was trying to be more peppy and just kind of have like the same bubbly kind of teen pop that Justin Bieber was kind of having in his early days, but some of these just did not translate well to acoustic, and if they did, they didn't have the right tempo for it, and that's just kind of the problem. I really felt like Pray was kind of a disappointing song. It was kind of an odd pick for a new song on here, and I kind of would have liked maybe something that probably another song like Baby or One Time would have been a good variation. It just was kind of out of nowhere that Justin Bieber kind of picked a song like Pray just to kind of have that sort of audience when he didn't really do songs like that too often. I mean, he did later, years later on Like Justice, but it just was kind of one that just didn't really have like the right kind of edge. It just was, it positioned this album kind of in a different light compared to the stuff that normally acoustic artists kind of do, at least. I mean, it just kind of came off as this acoustic album was kind of more upbeat and kind of in a more peppy and kind of preppy kind of sense, more so than like the smoky, typical autumn bass music that, like, when you think of acoustic albums by like Godsmack or Alice in Chains or some of those type folks, or other rock bands and that type of stuff that do acoustic, I feel like acoustic pop has a degree of, like, there is some stuff on here that does have like some romantic kind of charm, and there is some stuff on here that has some good romantic charm and good for the ladies in terms of just like the kind of sultriness that it kind of conveys. But I just look at the concept that not every song has that pitch nailed quite as evenly as I would have liked it to. Like, I feel like Believe, which I kind of felt was like somewhat patchy, also just didn't really deliver upon that either, but at least did a better job. And that's just kind of the concept. It had more smoky kind of tunes that just had a better pitch, and the production arrangements were just decided better. But this just really felt like it was trying to be like commercial acoustic pop. That just, the peppiness is kind of what held this project back more. And there just was a lot of upbeat songs and just variations of songs that just didn't have the pitch as far as, like, I mean, I like the acoustic pitch that this album had, but just the arrangements for the way that some of these tempos kind of work were just needed work. And that's the thing. I would say the biggest complaint about the acoustic album that Justin Bieber gave us is the tempos about some of these. But I do like what I do like the idea behind the acoustic, and like the effort that went into it. So it's this kind of thing. So it gets a 4.75 out of 10. The social score, though, as a result, I'm gonna give, like, I'll give the social score a 5 out of 10 because it did have some gems on here. I feel like maybe even in a very distant sense, I could say that Down to Earth, if you can handle like the kind of real soul and tempo, is probably another nice bop, because that one's pretty romantic too. But I would say at least basically the first 5 songs you hear are some good moments. So that's just kind of the concept. So it gets a pretty average score in terms of social. It has some nice romantic kind of moments for like a smoky kind of autumn in that sort of sense. It's kind of a good charmer, but I would definitely recommend Believe Acoustic before this one, just because that one is just probably the more robust kind of one in terms that this has the more sheer quality. So that's kind of the thing. But in terms of the future, like, Justin Bieber's been kind of going through some health problems, so I don't know if he's like retiring from music and such. But I would have to say that, like, I would have to say in such that this is an excellent concept, but the execution needed work. But there is some gems on here to fuck around and purchase still.